Watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult.
Let's talk about the massages.
It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. Every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny. The notion that I had the power to just produce whatever I wanted and have it air is completely false. Drake's mom, she came to me at the time and she said, "Would you help me with my speech for the judge?" And I said, "Of course."
Man, are you okay? You want to take a minute?
Yeah, I'm all right. Let's keep going. I am so sorry.
Dan Schneider has issued a video apology with a former actor that he's using to clear his name. In this highly scripted interview, Dan is denying everything and trying to paint a narrative that he is a different person now. Do you believe him? Let's get into it. If you aren't subscribed to the Let's Get Into It podcast, then you're only getting half the tea. For longer videos, deep dives, and of course, more of me, subscribe to the Let's Get Into It podcast listed in the description below. Now, we love a good PR move because it usually shows some true intentions. And with this new documentary coming out and exposing Nickelodeon, Dan Schneider has a lot of nothing to say in his response. At least I know a lot of the child stars are not happy, and he put this on his own YouTube channel. I mean, he's created these shows, he's a producer, he's able to make his own video and put it on a channel and just produce an interview that he has all the edits and the, verbiage down for. It seems just incredibly calculated, which I wouldn't expect anything less from the creator, this guy behind so many people's trauma, and more importantly, an enabler of someone like Brian Peck, who harmed Drake, and people like Alexa Nicholas, someone who we are friends with on the channel, who experienced these moments on the show that no child should be a part of.
Things that were very weird.
There are all these setups that reference like squirting goo on Jamie Lynn's face when she's just 13 years old.
Feel these kids really, wow, they're really soft.
People were looking back at old scenes and saying, Dan Schneider is obsessed with feet. Check this out.
Oh, very gross and
Impossible to escape children's feet. Dan Schneider.
absolutely disgusting.
Grown-ass man, what the are you doing? There's one video of Ariana Grande making a joke about a potato.
Sometimes I wonder if you can get juice from a potato.
Did that air on Nickelodeon?
Come on, give us the juice.
Yikes.
I'm thirsty.
In another video, Ariana is pouring water on herself in what seems like a very sexual manner, and people started saying, this feels inappropriate for children.
He really did steal the innocence away from people like Jeanette McCurdy, Ariana Grande, Miranda Cosgrove, and many more. So Amanda Bynes, poor Amanda Bynes. Now, Dan Schneider released a 19-minute long video on his YouTube channel featuring Boogie, who played T-Boo on iCarly, and talked about his reaction to the series. And he said it was difficult to watch, which, yeah, it was. Let's go ahead and react to some of this planned interview together.
Watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult. Me facing my past behaviors, some of which are embarrassing and that I regret. And I definitely owe some people a pretty strong apology.
He owes some people an apology. I'm surprised he hasn't issued these apologies before he tries to put out his own. He said it was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. I mean, there were a lot of stories revealed in this documentary. If you haven't seen them, there are, moments where he had his employees massage them. He belittled these employees. It was terrible.
Let's talk about the massages.
Okay.
Watching the content yesterday, it was disturbing.
It was wrong. It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. It was the wrong thing to do. I'd never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologize to anybody that I ever put in that situation. And even additionally, I apologize to the people who were walking around Video Village or wherever they happened, because there were lots of people there who witnessed it who also may have felt uncomfortable. So I owe them an apology as well.
Yeah.
Now, Dan looks different. Is Danny Boy on Ozempic? Some of those interviewed on Quiet on Set alleged that they had a traumatic and humiliating experience in the writer's room, one claiming that she was told to pitch an idea while pretending to be harmed from behind on the writer's room table. Dan Schneider facilitated and enabled and instigated a lot of inappropriate jokes in the writer's room and made everyone uncomfortable, but no one could stand up to him.
Dan, talk to me about the writer's room. From what I saw, not cool.
No, and I don't mean to cut you off, but if I can cut right to the chase, let me just say, no writer should ever feel uncomfortable in any writer's room, ever, period, the end, no excuses. Most TV writers, comedy writers have been in writers' rooms, and they are aware that a lot of times there are inappropriate jokes made and inappropriate topics come up. But the fact that I participated in that, especially when I was leading the room, it embarrasses me.
Wow, he really got like he really got some PR training before this. I mean, clearly he's producing this, so he's got his answers ready to go.
And I can tell you why it hurts really bad for me. I remember very clearly my early experiences, my first experiences in the entertainment business. I was green, I was scared, I was excited. It meant the world to me that I was getting those opportunities. And I went in and I got lucky because they were great. My first couple of experiences were fantastic. And the fact that I didn't pay that forward to every employee that walked through my door, it hurts my heart because I should have. And I wish I could go back and fix that. In the writer's room, there's no doubt that sometimes those jokes went beyond the pale and I said things that went too far or made practical jokes that went too far. And that was wrong. And that was because, I was an inexperienced producer. I was immature. Wouldn't happen today, but I'm just really sorry it happened.
Honestly, my first thought just watching that clip is that it is kind of nice that he is admitting to some of this, because that means the women who broke their NDAs to expose him will not be sued, because what he did is in fact illegal, and now he's admitting to it. Watching the series, Dan said that he could see the hurt in some people's eyes, and that it made him feel awful and regretful and sorry.
Let's speak directly to the people who did not have a good experience with you.
Okay, I would like to speak to those people because I hate that anybody worked for me and didn't have a good time. You know me, you've been on my sets. Look, I've had some employees that have worked for me for 10 years, some more than 20 years, who would work with me again, but...
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but something about his facial hair and his mouth, I just can't... Something looks so different about him, right? Ozempics and the lip filler, I don't know.
Everybody. There's still a significant number that didn't have a great time working for me. So my batting average isn't nearly high enough in that area. And the way they wouldn't get the best of me is that I would let the pressure of doing 40 or even more episodes per year, I would let that pressure get to me, which a good boss should never, ever do.
Was there specific things that you were doing?
Also, okay, do you really think this guy brought his own cue cards, or do you think that Dan provided them? Do you think Dan printed those cue cards off with those questions?
Sure, I would snap at people sometimes. I would be snarky when I could have given them a nicer answer. I would not give people the time that they needed. I would be in too big a hurry to get on to the next thing I had to do. And watching that show, it made me, there were so many times I wanted to pick up a phone and call some of those people and say, I'm so sorry and let's talk about it. And I wish you'd had a better time and I wish I could have shown you a better experience.
Yeah.
When it comes to the inappropriate jokes that Dan Schneider has been accused of writing into his show, and I wouldn't even say accused at this point. I mean, there are clearly many inappropriate jokes across a lot of his shows. He says that these jokes were created for kids because kids thought that they were funny, and that he is defending them, saying that it was a different climate back then, kind of using that excuse that it was a different time.
Some people think that some of those jokes are inappropriate for children. What do you think of that?
All these jokes that you're speaking of, that the show covered over the past 2 nights, every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny and only funny, okay? Now we have some adults looking back at them 20 years later through their lens, and they're looking at them and they're saying, oh, I don't think that's appropriate for a kid show. And I have no problem with that. If that's how anyone feels, let's cut those jokes out of the show, just like I would have done 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I cut it. I want my show.
You would have cut the jokes out when everyone agreed in this documentary that you cannot tell Dan no.
My show is to be popular. I want everyone to like it. The more people who like the shows, the happier I am.
Yeah.
So if there's anything in a show that needs to be cut because it's upsetting somebody, let's cut it.
So I think it's big for you to say with your work, if it's viewed as that today, you don't have a problem.
Cut it. Cut it. The last thing I want to ever do is put any content in a show that's going to upset my audience and make them want to turn off the TV. Why would I ever want to do that?
That makes sense.
This interviewer is sure going easy on him, isn't he? That's rather convenient.
I want to give you an opportunity to kind of elaborate on something.
Okay.
The thought process from the series is you had the power to just write a joke, and no matter what, it's going on TV. You just had that type of power. Is that true?
The notion that I had the power to just produce whatever I wanted and have it air is completely false.
Okay.
There were many, many levels of scrutiny. Okay? We had executives in LA. We had executives in New York.
So two coasts.
Two coasts
Okay.
of
Both
approval, yes. And by the way, approval at every stage, really.
Okay.
And I'm talking about wardrobe. I'm talking about makeup, sound, sets, dialogue, jokes, everything.
Now, when you say approval, these obviously that's a hierarchy, not your colleagues or
right.
people in the room. Okay.
No, not my colleague. No, these are my bosses.
But the way they described it, there's no denying that Dan built an empire himself, and he was at the top of it because he was running the most successful shows at Nickelodeon. Also, people are probably gonna ask, like, what are you chewing on your tea? It's like a lemon tea where you can, like, little, like, pieces of lemon are at the bottom. You can, like, eat it. It's really good, actually. It's like, I don't know how else to describe it, but good.
Bosses, and then their bosses, and then their bosses. And they're approving all of this stuff. Okay? And we're also shooting it in front of all sorts of adults and caregivers and the set teacher and the families. Everybody's watching it. And if anybody had said anything, hey, we don't like that, that's not appropriate, then it would have been cut out. Dozens and dozens of adults that were on the set. If they didn't say anything, if my bosses said, if they insisted, you got to make a change here, you got to cut that, I had to do it. I had no choice.
A big segment in the documentary is the on-air dare, where you would have these child stars go out on stage and they had to perform this dare, which was often scary, like Fear Factor kind of vibes, like bugs and nasty, and I would be running off stage. This left some of these child stars traumatized, which I totally would, same. And Dan is saying that it breaks his heart and he's so sorry. But it doesn't change the fact that this had happened. And why was this even established in the first place? I mean, he built the space for entertainment like this.
Seeing some of those on-air dares, seeing it now from where you are now in your life, what do you think of that?
I think that some of the on-air dares went too far. I think they pushed the envelope too far. Not all of them, not most of them, but some did. Nickelodeon wanted to do their version of Fear Factor. At the time we were shooting All That, so I was tasked with doing these on-air dares with the All That cast. So we get with the writers and we come up with all these ideas, and it's hard to do because we don't have the budget of Fear Factor, and we can't put the kids in dangerous situations like the adults are put in. So it was hard to come up with stuff. But we would come up with all these ideas of dares they could do. We would give them to the network, and they would say, tell us the ones that were okay.
Right.
Those are the ones we shot. Those are the ones that aired. At the time, I had no indication that any kid ever had a problem with them. But when I was watching the show over the past 2 nights, I now know that there were kids who did have problems with the on-air dares. And it breaks my heart. And I'm so sorry. I am so sorry to any kid who ever had to do a dare or anything that they didn't want to do or weren't comfortable doing. We went out of our way to make sure they were safe and that everything was done properly. But if a kid was scared and didn't want to do it, kids shouldn't have had to do it.
Yeah.
Period, the end.
Right.
And if I had known at the time, I would have changed it on the spot.
Dan is known for pushing the envelope, so I kind of don't buy this. Like, I'm sure it wasn't 100% safe all the time, and that's just in my opinion, okay? Allegedly, my opinion. Now, Dan is questioned about his relationship with Amanda Bynes. Dan said Amanda came to him when she wanted to be emancipated from her parents because she considered him to be part of her team, just like her lawyer, agent, manager. He said we supported her. Now, I was interested in hearing what he had to say about Amanda because we don't hear from Amanda in this documentary. We see her on TikTok sharing her new wigs, her haircut, her hair, extensions. And I love to see her out here living and showing her nails off. I saw one of those earlier too. But we haven't heard from her, so we don't know what she really thinks of all this.
Amanda Bynes was brought up in the series and her emancipation and how you were involved in that. Can you talk to us about it a bit?
Sure. Amanda was between the ages of 16 and 17, and she wanted to get emancipated from her parents, which was a fairly common thing with successful young actors, at least at the time.
Sure.
And she wanted that for herself. So she turned to her team, which included her lawyer, her agent, her manager, her...
Keep in mind that Dan came into Amanda's life when she was 10. She didn't have any agent, lawyer, manager. He got all of that for her. I mean, I believe her father was her manager or her mother. One of her parents were until they were ousted. And I believe that probably has something to do with Dan, but...
Publicist, me, because she included me as part of her team, thought of me that way. We supported her. She tried to get emancipated and ended up not working out, and she didn't.
Well, since we're here, let's stay here for a moment. There was also an incident where she had ran away from home, if you would. Can you talk to us a little bit just to clear the air of exactly what happened in that situation?
Yes. One night It was very late, well after midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning. Phone rang. I answered. It was Amanda. She was upset. She was in distress. She had had some conflict with her parents, I think her father, and she called me. I was immediately concerned about her safety. I called someone who I knew was fairly nearby. That person was able to go and pick her up. Then I knew she was safe. I felt better. She ended up being taken to the police.
Ooh, not Dan Schneider, like spilling some tea on Amanda that I was not aware of this. I don't know. We've made so many Amanda videos. There's been so much Amanda coverage that maybe we have talked about it, but I don't quite remember that. I remember her like living at his place supposedly for a month or 2, but they don't talk about that. The documentary accused Dan Schneider of being banned from set because of how he behaved around some of these child stars, which is something, of course, he wanted to address.
You were banned from your set.
Never happened. That is a false rumor.
What happened?
Add it to the list of false rumors.
Talk to me. What happened?
They were adult actresses at the time, and they had their own specific reasons for not wanting to do the show anymore. I'm not judging that. It got tense, and what they don't know, maybe, is I did everything I could to make that show go away.
So I think he's talking about Sam and Kat here. So Ariana Grande and Jeanette McCurdy.
My producer partner at the time, we would call and say, this is not a good situation.
Okay.
So I decided I'm going to do what most showrunners do, which is you're not on the set. There's a director there to shoot it. I'll go up to the writer's room. I'll work on the next script. For me not to be on the set, yeah, maybe some people thought I got banned.
So it was more of an assumption because this guy's usually here and now he's not.
I don't know if it was an assumption. I don't know if somebody thought they were making me look bad by saying I got banned from the set. I have no idea.
Okay.
All I know is I was never banned from the set.
Yep.
Maybe he was recommended to stay away from the set, but not entirely banned, because banned is a strong word. I could feel him turning that down if executives brought it up and saying, I'll stay away, but it's not a ban. There was a moment where they speak about Drake Bell and what Brian Peck had done to him, because keep in mind, it seems like Dan Schneider is one of the main people at Nickelodeon who was fully aware that Drake Bell was Brian's victim.
Brian Peck was not hired by you.
No, I did not hire Brian Peck.
This was a Tolan Robbins production?
Yeah. And when Drake and I talked and he told me what had happened, I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened to me in my career thus far. And I told him, I'm here for you. What do you need? Which Drake mentioned in the show that we watched last night. And next, I heard that he went to court when this guy was being tried, Peck. And when Drake walked in, he saw 50 people sitting on the side of the courtroom supporting Peck. A lot of them pretty famous. Of course, Drake was devastated that happened. And even more disappointing, 41 of those people wrote letters for Peck, character letters, praising him for who he was and asking for leniency. And they knew that he was guilty. They knew he had confessed to some degree, and they still did this. That's baffling that adults would do that.
It is possible that Dan Schneider does feel remorse for what had happened to Drake there. And I think maybe if he, kept quiet, it was probably to protect himself and the shows and to avoid this bad press that ended up, coming back and getting him.
I don't know if people know this, but Drake's mom, a lovely woman who I stay in contact with this day, she came to me at the time and she said, Dan, I'm not good with words like you are. And would you help me with my speech for the judge? And I said, of course. And I did. And he ended up going to prison and serving his time. And yeah.
Not enough time.
That was probably the darkest part of my career. And here's the kicker that I really don't get. After he got out of prison and was, to my knowledge, a registered sex offender, he was hired on a Disney Channel show. I don't understand that. I don't understand.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, man. Are you okay? You want to take a minute?
Yeah, I'm all right. Let's keep going.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Not the do you want to take a minute? Okay, let's humanize him, but also I totally that's a really sad moment. You can't help but to get choked up. It's a human experience. Schneider also addressed the allegations that he would cast black actors in racially stereotyped roles, including that all alum Brian Hearn, who we've talked about Brian before on this channel, and he did not have a great experience on all that. Brian said I was referred to as a piece of charcoal. Remarks like that are harmful and they stay with you.
I saw you be honored for diversity in your work.
Yes, and the reason for that is diversity has always been very important to me in my shows. If you go back to the very first Nickelodeon show I ever made, that's very evident, as it is in the second one, and then the first movie I ever made for Nickelodeon, which starred Kenan and Kel, and every show I did after that had a lead black actor in it. I'm very proud of that. It's very important to me. And not only am I proud that they were in my shows, I'm exceptionally proud of the achievements they've had beyond my shows, and they've gone on to bigger and better things, and that gives me a great sense of pride.
This is almost giving, like, I don't know, it's giving AI, like his responses. And especially this paid actor who's here to just like, yeah, agree, not really challenge anything or question any like specifics.
The main thing that I would change is how I treat people and everyone. I definitely at times didn't give people the best of me. I didn't show enough patience. I could be cocky and definitely overambitious, and sometimes just straight up rude and obnoxious, and I am so sorry that I ever was. And all right, when I watched the show, I could see the hurt in some people's eyes, and it made me feel awful and regretful and sorry. I wish I could go back, especially to those earlier years of my career, and bring the growth and the experience that I have now and just do a better job and never ever feel like it was okay to be an asshole to anyone ever.
I wonder what this and like the intention of this video is, to like save his reputation, to get him back into the studio, because that would be a nightmare.
Look, I wanted to make funny TV shows for kids, and we definitely did that. But if I could go back, I would get it done in different ways. I'd just be nicer as often as possible and listen more to the people on my team. And I would do everything that I could to make sure that everyone had a good experience.
And maybe not force your young female writers to act like they are having something stuck up their butt while acting up in the writer's room. Yeah, that would be a good start. I'm sorry, guys, but part of me, I'm not buying this apology. It's a YouTube apology, so it can go in the history of YouTube apologies, right? Does this qualify? I think it does. But I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in a new one soon. Bye, guys.